I think we are. Okay, so we're live on...
Getting a couple of live streaming messages. Oops.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, we're live everywhere. We're live everywhere. We're on a few different platforms and you are here. Welcome back to the Coaches to the Moon podcast. Everyone, I'm here with Wendy Corner. She is a communication coach, which I'm really excited to learn about. But she's also a qualified speech pathologist, and I've written this one down, a myofascial release therapist, who I'm sure is going to give us some very cool tips on speaking and presenting. Wendy, so glad to have you here.
Lovely to be here. We've had some exciting conversation before we got on stage.
We've learned, you wouldn't know it for her accent, but Wendy is from Craigellachie in Scotland and near Glenfiddich in Speyside, whiskey capital. Well, you know, that is... Okay, sure. I know that could be controversial to say that, but I'm a big whiskey fan. My friends watching are big whiskey fans. Let's start with this. Any tips on a kind of second tier whiskey no one would expect? We all know Glenfiddich and, you know, a lot of the Islay ones, those top level, the Macallan.
Even if you can't pronounce all the ones from Islay, because they're very definitely Gaelic. I mean, you sort of put Bunnahabhain in front of somebody and they go, what?
Yes, no, but yeah, that's why we all stick with our Macallan and our Johnny Walker, I suppose. Easy to say. Lagavulin every now and then. Yes. Any tips on a whiskey that the Australian people need to know about? Well,
my personal favourite is Benriach, which is a very light, gentle one from Speyside, obviously. And it comes in different finishes, as the whiskey connoisseurs will know. There are different finishes, and that depends on whether it's been matured in casks that are made from bourbon or sherry or whatever. So yes, it's a light. The finish that I like is a light one. It's a 10-year-old. It's quite a light colour, and just with a touch of water. Ideally, spey water. However, that's a bit difficult to get over here.
Tough.
Just a little bit. All whiskey should be had with just a tiny bit of water, particularly if you're talking about...
Open up the flavours, open up the nose.
Exactly.
Take off that alcohol a little bit.
And certainly you nose it first. I mean, I know you don't have it in a brandy balloon, but you still appreciate the nose before you swig.
And then you roll in the mouth first, which is tough with the higher alcohol ones. We had one, interestingly enough, and we'll get on to coaching in just a second, everyone. We had one that was 62%, but it was so well made, it had no burn on it. We were expecting the hairs on our chest to fall off and be instantly singed, but nothing happened. And everyone kind of sat there waiting for this burn, and it never happened. It was great.
It was which one it was?
I can, by the end of this podcast, I will tell you the name of it for sure. Yeah, I will tell you the name of it, but I'm gonna have to do some texting some friends. Actually, give me 1 sec. I have my notes right here. It's called Abunda. Abalor Abunda.
Abalour.
Abanad.
Oh, right. Yes, the Abalour ones. Got you. Yeah.
Sure. That was massive. And you can't say any of these things. You know, Glendronach, Balvenie, Macallan, Antioch, Craigellachie, Glenlivet, and Abalor.
Abalour, by the way. It's Abalour.
Abalour. They were rock and roll, though, you know?
Absolutely. And if you're interested, you know, this time of year you get Walker's shortbread in the shops.
Sure.
It's from Abalour as well.
There you go. Fantastic.
Next door village to Craigellachie.
Wow, this is great. Well, you'll have to come on my whiskey podcast. I actually used to have a wine blog back when I was in hospitality, and I was training to be a sommelier. But the long story short, hospitality life, I let it catch up with me. I put on lots of weight. I was drinking too much, smoking cigarettes, not sleeping enough. That led me into then having a big revelation, losing about 20 kilos, feeling good again. Then I got into health coaching people on how I did it rather than counting calories and quitting alcohol and everything. That led me into getting quite good at marketing, my own coaching business. Then when I figured out the babies were coming along, I was like, I can't really be doing webinars and sales calls for the next few months. What can I do? I became a full-time marketer. Here we are. You're a coach, and I'm so glad to have you on to talk about it.
Cool. What a wonderfully convoluted journey.
Yeah, I know, but we still love a whiskey.
Absolutely.
I'll be honest, I buy less Scotch and more Irish or bourbon because I do like to have a little bit of ice in my whiskey, and I like to have a cold whiskey and a big one, and I don't mind if it dilutes a bit, and I feel like I'm wasting it if I buy a beautiful whiskey. So I buy, just a Jameson or something lovely from America, a rye bourbon, that sort of thing. But
Well, when you go to Scotland and you go to Craigellachie, the Highlander Inn has literally floor to ceiling, all the way around, different whiskies.
Wow, goodness me! Well, I'll go in and ask for a one of them with Red Bull. Cut it with Red Bull and see what they do.
Yeah, I think you may be shown the door, but they actually have a separate whiskey menu.
Amazing. It's the place we want to be.
I'll send you some pictures.
Please do. It's the place we want to go to. Wendy.
Yes, sir.
In your own words, you said you empower female leaders to overcome their fears and speak their truth to millions.
Indeed.
Why do you believe presentation skills are so important for a business owner these days?
Well, frankly, leaders speak and speakers lead. So if you have a message to get out there, you need to be able to present yourself. So whether you are a coach, whether you're whatever your line of work, being able to present yourself and your message is critical. Because otherwise, how do people know who you are? And people, regardless of whatever your widget brand and whatever you are selling, if you're selling a particular physical thing or you're selling a service, people buy the person behind it. If you consider, you mentioned the word virgin, and immediately people think of Richard Branson, whether he's involved in it or not.
Yeah.
Everybody goes back to the original person, and that he's got such a charisma about him that the name Virgin means, oh yeah, let's go with that. Apple holds the same charisma, courtesy of Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
So the person behind it is phenomenally important. And if you can get your message across as that person, your brand is then out to the world.
Have you seen that become the personal brand more of a factor now that everyone's got their own Facebook, Instagram, Twitter accounts? Now that, for example, we see, probably not many people follow Tesla as a company on Twitter, but everyone follows Elon Musk. Have you seen the presentation skills become more important now that everyone is showing themselves off as a personal brand rather than a company?
Definitely. Because the passion that you have behind the person is critical. I mean, I've been to so many networking meetings where if you're in a part of a networking group and you have the same thing, for instance, and I'm not picking holes on BNI here at all, but as an example, if you are part of a BNI chapter and you have every week you have your meeting and you say the same thing, and after a while people get stale. And they lose the passion for what they're saying. Now, they think, well, everybody in the room has heard this, but they're forgetting that there may be a couple of visitors there who don't have a clue what you're doing. And actually, if you lose that passion for what you're doing, why would I buy from you? Where's the connection here? I'm not getting your passion. So why should I buy from you if you're not passionate about your own thing?
Sure.
You've got to keep that going.
Absolutely. Well, it is just exuding out of you, Wendy, passion for what you do, and clearly a skill for what you do. You're walking the walk, or dare we say, talking the talk. And
nice one.
I couldn't agree more. I a lot of coaches that seem to be doing the best out there, their brand, their personality, their life is their brand, is their company, and it's obvious which people are going to go further than others. And it doesn't mean you have to be extroverted, does it? It doesn't mean you have to be loud and talking like we are, lots of movement and lots of energy. It just means you need to be authentic and believe it.
Definitely. I mean, one of the things I start off with potential clients is, well, who's your role model as a speaker? And if you're up to the Tony Robbins and the sort of live on stage to millions of people, literally millions of people at any one time, that requires a certain persona. If you're more of a individual type person, I mean, someone like Jim Rohn, he still had a major impact, but it was in a smaller group. And so his persona was different. If you look at any of the big leaders, any of the thought leaders now, I mean, Richard Branson is happy enough to stand up in front of a whole heap of people, but he's actually more comfortable in a small group environment.
Interesting.
So you don't have to be the, loud, what, rah, rah, rah. It's who you are then relating to. Because if you are rah, 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 and the person on the other end is going, I could never be like that. You've got to be able to connect with your audience. And if your audience is not after that, then no point. And if it's not who you are, then you're pretending to be something you're not. And as you were saying about authenticity, that shines through. If you've got a mask on and you're trying to be something you're not, then it will show in your non-verbals. Can you see the very slight micro shake of my head at the moment?
Yeah.
It will come out. You will show it in how you're presenting.
Sure thing.
That's why it's really important to know who your audience is and for you to connect authentically with them.
That's an interesting question, is knowing your audience, knowing who they are versus knowing who you are. How should people approach giving the same speech, for example, to two completely different audiences? Do we adjust the way we speak for the audience, or do we stick to our guns and continue being exactly who we are?
Well, you can still speak from who you are, but you speak the language of the person you're talking to. Now, don't know whether you ever experienced going to mainland Europe before you came over here.
Yeah, many times.
But the Brits have a wonderful way of going to France and speaking loudly and clearly in English, expecting the French to understand. What? No. En France, vous parlez français.
Sure.
So you have to speak the language of the person that you're talking to.
Okay.
You're still you. However, you use the words that are going to appeal, that are going to land with your audience. Otherwise, you may just as well be talking to the wall. You're not going to get through.
Yeah, no, massive. I couldn't agree more. It's a huge part of marketing. I have to adopt the persona of a lot of different people I work for in different industries. So to write their ad copy. So I might have to be writing for a dentist or for a mum or a construction business owner. I've never done any of those things. So I need to get in and talk as those people, because if I talk as Alex, no one's going to care. So, but the other thing we talk about a lot in marketing is for coaches is the power of their story and to leverage that to grow a brand.
Definitely.
How important is storytelling for a great speech? And what would you say to people who believe that their life is maybe too boring to be speaking about their stories in front of an audience?
Okay. 2 questions in one there.
Yes.
Roll back. Stories, as you could tell from my facial expression, are critical, absolutely critical for you selling your thing. I mean, there's a phrase, and I'm sure you know it, that statistics tell, stories sell.
Yeah.
So you can come at things with all sorts of information. However, it's how that can be applied that's important. Because as you tell a story, if you tell it skillfully enough and you know who you're talking to and you engage them with what you're saying, they start to come into your story and they live vicariously through your words. So if you are in a situation, particularly coaching, because most of us coaches have had some experience in what we're coaching, otherwise we wouldn't be in that position anyway. So the idea is that you are a few steps ahead of your ideal audience. But if you're so far ahead that they think, there's no way I could ever get there, that's where if you do feel as though you're there, you just turn it back a bit. If what you're saying is relatable, I can get there. I feel as though I've got it's only 2 or 3 steps. Yeah, I can do that. You can also say that actually, by the way, I'm over here, but that's not where we're going right now. Because the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. Let's go to the first couple of steps. We can get them. We can do that later on. So telling your story is absolutely essential. If you feel as though your story is boring, here's a bit of a quote for you. What appears to be common knowledge to you is somebody else's rocket science. So you may feel as though you've got nothing particularly to share. But cast your mind back to where you were before you made your breakthrough. And that person wants to know how you got from there to where you are here. You may consider it a boring trip, but I bet you they won't.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. You ever feel, I'm sure you don't feel this, to be honest, because you're clearly a very good storyteller, but you'll be around somewhere like a BNI networking event and they'll say, tell us who you are and tell us something interesting about you. And that strikes fear into people's hearts. But what you just said makes a lot of sense. You know, what may be commonplace to you could be very interesting to other people. So for me, even the fact that I moved here from England when I was a kid could be very interesting to someone who would love to go to England. For me, it was just my life. Boring to me. You know, I'm not Kevin Hart. I'm not some great, hilarious storyteller about everything that happens to me. But what is commonplace to you is someone else's rocket science. Is that right?
Yep.
Very, very cool. I love that. That's really, really nice. Story is, you know, a big thing. And so the content of how you're speaking, of what you're speaking about is very important. But obviously you're presenting your skills, the presentation, they're massive as well. Could you explain your VOICE acronym that you teach in your webinars?
Yep. Well, when I do the work specifically, backtrack, there are 7 pillars of influential communication. Okay. And one of them is the power of your voice. And so when I've done a deep dive on just that one, power, we've come up with VOICE. We've got volume, onset, inspiration, constriction, and expansion. Okay. So the V for volume. When we're hardwired to look for novelty. Now you have 2 beautiful little people who, you know, that if you try and sugar them to sleep, there's a good Scots word for you. Oh, by the way, just to let you know, I sit on a bouncy ball. So if I'm bouncing up and down,
that's what it is. Great.
If you're rocking your babies to sleep, you've just about got them to sleep and you stop. And what happens? They're awake again. Yeah. Because you've broken the rhythm. They're hardwired for novelty. Now that novelty comes in so many different ways. Movement, which is what you've experienced there. Yep. Also in sound. Cast your mind back to school days. Did you have a teacher who just droned on incessantly? Many, yes. Just zoned out. Now, if you've got somebody who is either monotonous, what we'll call monotone, so there's not much color in their voice, you zone out. If there's a constant stream of sound or it's at the same volume the whole time, you zone out. So the thing with the volume is there will be times when you get somebody's attention. Equally, if you've got something a bit conspiratorial about it, you drop your voice and you lean in and you watch your audience. They will do exactly the same. If there's the chance I might be missing something, this is juicy. So volume is something that you can use really effectively. Yeah. Sorry to keep laughing. You're so funny. This is great. I'm keen to hear what else you say, to be honest. Okay. Onset. The O for onset is around pausing. Again, we're going back to the wired for novelty. If you're speaking and you lose your way in your pre-prepared speech, so many people go, and it's pretty obvious that that's what you've done.
Sure.
Now, statistically proven, the longer you pause, the more intelligent you appear. How cool is that? As long as you'll then adopt the thinky look. You're searching for that perfect next word. Now, as long as the next word is worth waiting for, you will be forgiven. Okay, so that's what we call the pre-pause. Then there's also the post-pause. That's when you dropped an absolute nugget. And you let it land before you go on. So again, that's disrupting the constant stream of sound. So that's the O. The inspiration is around breathing. Have you got adequate breath pressure to keep your energy and the voice going all the way to the end of your sentence?
Sure.
English tends to pack most of the information towards the end of a sentence. Yeah. So if you are a bit nervous and you're just using the top part of your lungs and you're shallow breathing and you can lose the end of the sentence. And then you've lost your critical bit. Again, going back to that pitch that I was talking about earlier, very often people lose the end because they're bored. They go on to the next thing in their heads. They go, excuse me, what was it you were saying? I'm sure that was useful, but I lost it. So did you.
Right.
So that's the sort of thing that's really important, to keep the breath pressure going all the way to the end. So you need a good lungful of air and consciously keep it regulated. Then we talk about the constriction. Yep. So that's where, if there's any tightness anywhere. Most people in the old days, before we had microphones, used to raise their voice by tightening their throat. Can you hear the difference here? Now, actually, I haven't changed the volume at all. All I've done is constrict the muscles around my throat, which makes it sound as though it's louder, but actually there's tension there.
Yeah, you sound like a politician. Or a headmistress, like back in the day.
Yes.
Yeah.
You keep that going and you will actually damage your vocal cords. Okay. And that's what I've experienced with back in the day when I was working with people with voice problems. Okay, because they would be feeling they weren't getting their message across, so they feel as though they have to put it out there and shout. And you can actually see in my neck the tension.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So whereas if you calm it down, that tension goes. You come across as a much calmer, quieter, more engaging voice. And if you need to project it, that's where your breathing comes in.
Great.
So that's where the other part of my work, the internal communication, which we can come on to another point, is how if there's any constriction anywhere in your body, it will show up in your throat. So your voice will show. So then the last one, the E for expansion, was talking about resonance. Okay. Now you have three major resonating chambers: your head, your throat, and your chest. You personally, as a gentleman, have a longer set of vocal cords than I do as a woman. So you tend to, because it's longer, go for a bigger resonating chamber. Gentlemen use their chests. Okay. Yeah, okay. I can feel that. What I've done, and that's the way you can tell whether you're on your head or your chest, particularly if you stick your hand over your chest and you speak with a lower voice. At the moment, I can feel it more in there. However, nothing in my head. Exactly. Now, if I was to speak like that, you'd be a little bit concerned about me. I'm sure. Because you wouldn't expect that sort of voice from somebody. I mean, okay, you haven't seen my height, but you can tell that as a female, I would not usually have such a low voice. Sure. The head resonance is when you have the higher registers. Now, a good way of knowing when you're not using your head resonance, as your little ones will be able to attest at the moment because they've got a cold, you know yourself, you can't access that head resonance when you've got a cold. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yep. And you can hear it when somebody's got a cold, they sound all gummed up, because then you're not getting that. The thing with resonance is it amplifies. It's like a sounding box.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you've been to a concert, the electric guitar plugs into the amplifier, boom, you can hear it. Okay. Now, if you were to take your resonating chambers out of it, you'd not hear you at all. It's really quite quiet, because you're looking at vocal cords that are in a fella about that long and in a woman about that long.
Okay.
So they aren't very long. So in order to make the sound audible, you've got to have these resonating chambers. The throat is important as well. And you can hear if somebody's tight around there, because you've just heard it. Now, the thing with the reason that this resonance is important is because if you don't, you can use the different sounds there. And again, I'll just ping back to the resonance for one more time. If you've ever heard yourself recorded and you think, that's not my voice, there's a reason it doesn't sound like that to you. Because when you're speaking, you get the vibration going up into your ear through the bones. So it's what's known as bone conduction, as well as the sound conduction. Mm-hmm. Everybody else only hears the sound. Mm. So that's why your voice sounds different to you than when you hear it recorded, because the recording is only picking up the air conduction.
Wow. That makes a heck of a lot of sense, Wendy. Mm. Goodness me.
And that's why a lot of people go, oh, that's not my voice. I don't like that voice. Well, I'm sorry, but that's what the rest of us hear and love.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I've gotten better at the more and more I've been on video and podcasts. But I do remember back at school, one of my teachers called me tinny, said I had a tinny voice. And I thought, it's really mean. I don't think I have a tinny voice. I think I've got a resonant voice. But maybe when I was 17, it was a bit tinny. And I've started to give less and less of a shit about what people think about my voice as I've gotten older. And so I'll podcast and video galore. But back in the day, when I was starting out with making content, as I'm sure it is for a lot of coaches, terrified to get on film, terrified to do a live video. And then when you finally watch it back, it's even worse, because we are getting purely the sound projection, not the sound and bone. I used to do singing lessons. So continue, please.
The other thing to bear in mind is when you see yourself on video, you are confronted with your own mannerisms.
Right.
And also you may think, hang on a minute, that doesn't look like me. Because again, you have, when you're looking at yourself recorded, then there's a difference between left and right.
Mm.
Okay. So what you're used to seeing, if you're used to seeing yourself in the mirror, you see one version of yourself. When you see it then played back, you're seeing the opposite way round.
Yeah.
And sometimes that looks very different.
Mm.
Because inevitably, I mean, we're all unique. Our faces are very rarely symmetrical.
Yeah.
We have a better side. So the side that you're used to seeing as the left-hand side, and that's left for you, is actually what I'm doing with my right hand.
Yeah.
So appreciating that what the thing that you see recorded is not how it looks to you, but again, it's getting back into the skin of the person that you're talking to. This is what they see of you, and actually, they really quite like it.
Yeah, well, they do, and I guess now that we all have cameras in our pockets, that must be a really invaluable tool for practicing your presenting skills. Film yourself. Rather than in the mirror, film yourself doing it.
Yes, definitely. And with that, I mean, what I recommend to my clients is that they record themselves and upload to YouTube, not for public consumption, as an unlisted. So then, if they want to, they can share it with specific people, so that we can do a bit of critique on it. And you then watch yourself. You've got a benchmark. You've got progress you can see, because you've got objective progress. And you can see yourself improving, and you go, oh, yay, go me. And therefore, we are all our own worst critic, but you can actually see the progress, and that makes such a difference.
That's a great tip. Would have never thought to upload. I just kind of wing it. But I have the beauty of being quite confident. But I know that a lot of my people I market with, they say, I don't want to do a video, that sort of thing. At first, my advice is, if they say, should I do a video ad or an image? I'll say, if you're not great on video just yet, then let's go for an image, because the video won't project the best of you right now. And that's fine, because we all have our different mediums, what we're good at. You know, I'm terrible with numbers. I don't know how to work a spreadsheet properly, but you know, I'm pretty comfortable speaking to people. So that's videoing yourself, uploading to YouTube is a very, very good technique. But and I want to skip back to your internal, external, and intra-ernal speaking in just a second.
Sure.
But while we're on tangible advice, because that was a really, really good tip. Another little nugget I'd love to be able to give people on this podcast is, you have done a lot of coaching and mentoring for TEDx speakers.
Yep. And
TEDx is a kind of platform that I believe a lot of people like myself and coaches and business owners would love to get onto. Yes. Do you have one or two things that a coach or a business owner could do to kind of get themselves on the top of the list or book more presentations? Are there any industry behind the scenes tips and tricks?
Well, the thing about TEDx is that the tagline is ideas worth sharing.
Sure.
So whatever you're bringing to market has to be something that's novel.
Yeah.
Now, there may be a novel twist on something that's well established, and that's absolutely fine. And again, that comes down to the person who's presenting it. Now, that's the first thing. The other thing to say is that TEDx is a franchise. So each one of them is set up differently. Now, unless you're living in Whoop Whoop, there will be plenty of opportunities for in different cities. There will be different groups that you can join, that you can apply to. So, I mean, in Perth now, I think we've got 6 different TEDx groups.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, it started off with TEDx Perth, and then we've added in the UWA, which is the University of Western Australia. There's East Fremantle, there's Rockingham, there's Kings Park, which is a new one that's just set up, and that's primarily for youth. Okay. So each one of them will have a different flavor, if you will. So, I mean, obviously the UWA one is more academic and student related, and all the people who run that group are students. So they're doing this on top of their studies, sort of extracurricular stuff, which is why they have the main conference in December after they've finished all their exams. So different groups run differently. They have a different flavor. So depending on the sort of topic that you want to speak on, it may not work for one group, but it might work somebody out in a different group. And each year for the big conferences, there is a theme. So if you've got your topic base, you know what you want to talk about, and you've got it pretty much mapped out, that will give, because when you apply for an expression of interest and they say, okay, we've got the theme of da, will you fit into this theme? Maybe not this year, maybe next year, or maybe you would be better off in a different group this year. So that's one of the things to think. The way I work with people to get them ready for TEDx, once they're accepted into TEDx, all TEDx stuff is done voluntarily. But to get people up to the stage where, yep, she's good, well, we'll take it straight in. We don't need to do a great deal of work with them. You've got your presentation mapped out. You know what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. And you hand that over to them and go, oh, right, because there is a bit of coaching goes on in terms of mapping out the speech if you haven't already done it. If they see that there's something there. So yes, have a map out of what you wanted to say. Know that it's going to be time limited. Depending on how many people are in the group, in the presentation, you've probably got around 14 to 16 minutes max. You are expected to do it without notes.
Yep.
So you need to know what you're talking about. If you have slides, and most people like something to look at these days, I highly recommend very few words on a slide. Image, purely image if you can, an image that encapsulates what you're saying. But you remember the old death by PowerPoint. Yeah. People would read off the slide and you think, I can read that. honestly, I can read quite well. And what you'll find people doing is they'll read that rather than listen to you. So that's where, again, you need to be engaging and have an image that encapsulates what you're saying. And people are focused on you and what you're saying. Right. So those are a few things that I would just drop in there for people who are wanting to do a TEDx. And it does make a big difference because your presentation then is up on YouTube for posterity. Yeah, well, I'll book one for next year. I'd love to. When I saw that you did that, I was like, I'm getting in. I did Toastmasters. I did quite well, but then I was, to be honest, the youngest in there by about 35 years. So I stopped going, but it was very fun. I was a trivia host for a long time. And I think I just love the sound of my own voice a little bit. Plus, I do love talking to people. So I'm definitely, hold me to this. I will try and do this next year, and I'll come to you for assistance on how to book it. Because as I'm sure everyone else is learning from this podcast, you seem to be incredible at what you do, Wendy. But there's one thing that just on that note, Toastmasters is really helpful for giving you the opportunity for practice. However, Toastmasters, the feedback is in-house. Yeah. And depending on who else you've got in the group, the level of feedback you get can be useful, or it can be mediocre, and it can frankly be, I'm actually working with two ex-Toastmasters at the moment who've been told, you're going too fast for us, hold on. They're trying to hold them back because these guys want to get moving. So they said to me, can you give me a hand here? Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not dissing Toastmasters, but I'm just saying that the feedback you get is from within the group themselves. And unless they've had some training, it varies on the group is what I'll say. No, that's fair enough. No professionals there. It's all just people having fun, right? So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, great starting point. And there's clearly some people very talented there, but you never know. You never know. It's a mishmash of people just having a crack. And then so if you find a group that you like the idea of it, but it doesn't gel with you, go and have a look at other groups. That makes sense as well. I probably could have given it more time, but to be honest, I worked in hospitality. It was my one night off of the week. I was going speaking. I was like, go hang out with my wife instead. I think that was probably a better move long term. Put all this ambition aside for a minute and and go and watch some TV. So that's what I did in the end, which was lovely. Cool. Bone to pick with you though, Wendy. Bit of a bone to pick with you. Okay. You're clearly very intelligent. You use lots of words, and I've not missed things, but I am slow to pick up on everything you've told me, because I remember you told me the other day about three voices, perhaps the internal, the external, and the intraernal. Internal, and you did explain them to me, but I'm afraid I've had so much knowledge from you that I need another explanation of certainly internal, external, and internal voices, please. Sure. Well, the other thing is that whilst you and I have had this discussion, your audience hasn't heard it. So, of course, we want to do this again. Absolutely. Okay. Most people come to me with something around the external communication. I've got a presentation to do. What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? And so they're looking as we've already explained, about the structure of what they're saying and also the delivery. So we have the science behind how you structure what you're going to say and the artistry of delivery. So that tends to be the external stuff. But that will work only if the internal communication is matching up. I've already said about the micro shakes of the head. Mm-hmm. So if your internal communication does not match your external communication, it will leak in your nonverbals. Yeah. So we will dig into what is the internal communication? What is that internal Q&A like? Because we've said that you are your own worst critic. And that inner critical voice can be damning. If you actually said out loud some of the things you say to yourself, you frankly wouldn't say that to your worst enemy. So we do some work around internal communication, looking at the language that you use to think, because we do think in language. It's an internal Q&A, if you will. So we look at the words that you're using to describe your thoughts, because that will also color how you experience the world. That also it colors how you communicate with other people, because you can only give from what you've got.
Sure.
Sort of fill your bucket, oxygen mask and all that business. You can only fill other people's buckets from a full bucket.
Yeah.
And if you're working around, particularly coaches, if you are working from a situation where you are so critical of yourself, it's going to put a ceiling on what you present. Now, this is not to guilt us, any of us, because we all have a very competent inner critic. Some have louder voices than others. Some are being told, shh. But it's being aware of that internal language. So that's where the internal stuff comes. So as I said, most people start on the outer layer, and I go, hang on a minute, we've got to go in a bit deeper. And we look at that bit. The internal communication. Now, this is where absolutely you went, yeah, what? This is a word that I made up. So no wonder you haven't heard it, and you won't find it in a dictionary yet. We are traditionally taught that there is a feely part and a thinky part. We think up here, we perceive in our bodies, we feel in our bodies, sort of pokey, ouch, that hurts. Thank you, Descartes, because you gave us the I think, therefore I am. And there was that differentiation between thinking and perceiving and feeling. And there are some people who still believe that the body is purely the bit to carry around the thinking part. No, we perceive with our whole bodies. We all know that situation of fear, we can feel it in our guts. If you've got jumpy legs, it's usually a sign that you're not happy about the situation and you want to get out of there. Your body is telling you, I'm out of here. If you're in a networking situation or you're talking to somebody, just glance down at their feet. If they're fully present to you, the feet are facing you. If the feet are turning away, the rest of the body will come in a minute. But I'm wanting out of here. My point is that your body perceives in and of itself. Very often we don't acknowledge and accept the feelings that are going on. If you have a feeling comes up, the first question we ask ourselves is, or any situation that we're in, am I safe? Can I be myself in the situation? Now, if either of those are a no, we tend to push the feelings into the body because it's not safe to express them right now. Mm-hmm. Okay, and you can see from my body language, I'm feeling in that. So I can't do that. This is not safe for me at the moment. So sure. You put on a mask, if you will. You put on a persona of how I need to be in this situation to stay safe. Meantime, you squash those feelings into your body. Now, over time, that stacks and it gets squashed into the body, and it's housed in fascia, which is a form of connective tissue. The fascial system should enable you to move freely. But over time, the more you stack these micro traumas, if you will, the tighter it gets, until it gets to the stage where you've got like Velcro and you can't move freely. And anything of that level of restriction, and you're a gentleman who obviously works out. You've done, you've had the DOMS. You know what I mean by DOMS. Yeah, delayed onset muscle stiffness. If you don't stretch, your body gets constricted, yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're looking at a fascial restriction there because there's fascia over the top of muscles. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because if there's a restriction anywhere in your body, it will show up elsewhere. So, I mean, classically, I stand up at this point, but if you can see, if I pull on my jumper, it's not really showing up very well. It's radiating out. Yeah. The tightness is radiating out. So wherever the restriction is, it will impact on lots of other places. And that's where the fascial work that I do impacts on the voice. So if we can release the fascia wherever it's tight, it will improve the vocal quality.
So the mind, the feelings you have, your mind and your feelings and your emotions will affect your physiology, which in turn affects the way you speak physically, rather than from a confidence point of view. It's kind of, unstoppable. Nothing you can do about it at that point unless you know about it. It's not like project your voice more. It'll never be as good if you're in a situation where you're feeling nervous.
Yes. Yeah. Because I mean, in terms of, and I'm sorry, I'm going to dump a little bit more.
Please.
From a brain chemistry perspective, the perception of, am I safe in this situation, can lead to one of two stories that you tell yourself.
Mm-hmm.
One, this is fearful.
Yep.
Two, this is exciting. Now, same brain chemistry is involved. The difference is whether you're breathing. Because if you slow your breath down to less than 12 breaths a minute, you can't access the adrenaline pathway. So you don't go into a mode. So that's again why the I for voice inspiration is so important. If you're conscious about your breathing, and any time you feel those nerves getting higher, you stop, you breathe slowly, deeply, and all the way down to the base of your lungs. I mean, talk about talking to your audience. I was talking about bellows the other day, and everyone was going, what? Bellows?
Yeah, that's an old school term. You don't hear of bellows so much these days.
So I actually ended up finding a photograph of one, or an graphic. In the old days when we had fires, we had bellows.
Yeah.
So you used to pump. The point being that that's how we're going to go all the way down to the bottom. The other thing I often do is pull out a balloon, which I won't at this point. But you've got to breathe all the way into the bottom to get that full air. And if you do that consciously, less than 12 times a minute, you cannot get that paralysis of adrenaline. You can still feel excited, but you don't go into that paralysis of fear or the freeze mode, because we talk about fright and flight. Mm-hmm. We forget the freeze, which is the third version of it. And again, that's the adrenaline getting stuck in the body.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a myofascial response.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it starts off with being a vagus nerve response. If you want to take it back a bit, but yes, it gets stuck in the fascia.
Great. That's massive. I mean, I don't know how we can even follow that up with another question, because that is enormous for so many people who maybe don't understand why they freeze up, why they get to the Toastmasters when they say, introduce yourself, and they stand up and nothing happens, deer in the headlights.
Yeah.
It's not just because you're a weak little, nervous, introverted loser who'll never get anywhere. It is all sorts of physical and physiological reasons all coming together. Mm-hmm. And Wendy is the person who can help you to fix it or to improve upon it. You're not broken. No one needs fixing, but we can all improve certain areas, right?
Definitely.
Wendy, this has been absolutely incredible. It's gone for twice as long as any podcast I've ever done.
I've just seen the time. Goodness me.
Yeah. I couldn't stop you talking. I wouldn't want to stop you talking. That was incredible. I'm so happy. And I think there's going to be some incredible clips coming out of this one. I do need to cut it there so I can go and process everything that's just happened. I'm super excited to listen back to this. And I think everyone's going to love it. Everyone's going to absolutely love it. So thank you so much for being on today. This has been incredible. And I cannot wait to definitely do some work with you in the coming year, because this is very exciting stuff.
Loved it.
Anywhere
Alex,
we can find you?
If I can just mention,
of course,
I have a 2-week free pass to the Courageous Influential Speakers Academy, starting on the 1st of November for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
it's going to be time limited, because after that we ramp up for the TEDx stuff, and I need to have the time to do that. But I'm happy to ping you the information. It gives people 2 weeks to come on 2 live coaching calls. We get a one-on-one with you in the first week, so we can see where you're at, where you want to be, and whether this is something that is right for you. So amazing. I'll send you that information. It just happens to be a really good time. We've had
perfect. Send it through. I'll put it in the links for all these videos for sure. Really exciting stuff. And everyone who's watching live, I hope you like that. Anyone who's listening on the recording, thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you so much one more time.
Thank you. Love chatting with you, Alex. We'll be in touch.
It's been great. And we'll see you next time on Coaches to the Moon.